Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Injured Worker Show, where we give you the 5-0 or the skinny and the lowdown on the war on injured workers here in America. And today what we're going to talk about is big ship lollipop USS Progressive tosses injured workers overboard. Because we've tried to get these folks to help us with our issue now on our federal human rights issue for over 5 years. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about naming names about the people that we've reached out to for help as injured workers here in America for the minimum federal standards that, Senator Sanders told us we need. So anyways, here we go. Let's just get started, and I'll jump right into it. If I can share a couple articles with you here first. We'll transfer over. See if I can make that small. For one, let's start with a letter that we got from Senator Sanders in 2015. It would be this one. Sorry about that. This is a letter we got from Senator Sanders in 2015. It was from Tom Perez, who was the director of the U.S. Department of Labor at the time. And it's also signed by Patty Murray. And basically it was telling them that we need minimum federal standards for our injured workers. And I was so happy when I saw this letter come out. And I thought, gee, finally. I'd been trying to seek help from Democrats locally for 5 years and nobody was helping, and I thought finally when this letter came out that they were going to step up and help us, people like Jason Call for Congress and Tyler Vega with the Berkes. It ended up they didn't want to. They said their priority is the whole Washington and Medicare for all, not your injured workers issue, even though I had the letter from Senator Sanders telling us we needed this to be done. And so it's really frustrating, and I'm going to name some of the names, but I want to share with this, in 2020, 5 years later, the United States Congressional Research Service also come out and told us we need these minimum federal standards for our injured workers too. So it's kind of frustrating to me as an injured worker who was told this is a solution to stopping a class war on you and the your human class across the United States of America, yet nobody will help us put this issue on the table. As I have begged for my progressive liberal Democrats to please stand up and represent us as we fight for all our other issues that we have going on. And instead I've been labeled, names and called names and everything else. I've been everything you can think of. But anyway, I've also called them back that because I get angry, but we know that they don't want to put your issue on the table, then people get enraged, injured workers do, and then everybody knows how that goes. So what we're going to do is just I'll move that one on there, and I'll move on to one more thing. Is Bob Halsagawa. I've asked for lawmakers to help us, and this is what he replied back to us. Basically, it was Bob Halsagawa, his aide, Jenny Chang, is his legislative aide. She wrote to me and said, thank you for your patience, apologies for the delay. Senator Halsagawa let me know that the Federal Oversight National Workers' Comp Commission already exists. It's shit. No, sir. If that was the case, why did Senator Patty Murray and Tom Perez and Senator Sanders tell us we need minimum federal oversight if that was OSHA? No, if that was the case, that's been there since 1972. Injured workers have needed the federal oversight since 1972, yet state lawmakers have done nothing but give us false narratives and spin the narrative away from the needed federal oversight and give us excuses like Bob Halsagawa has given me as he pushes whole Washington, which is a state fix, which we probably will not get on the table here in Washington because of several issues that's against our Constitution. And I'm not against the whole Washington at all, but what I am against is telling me you can't put my issue on the table with any of the other issues we got going on as your Democrats, and we need some minimum basic federal human rights for injured workers across America. Anyways, that's a letter from Bob Halsagawa's aide. As I've reached out to Bob Halsagawa and even spent 45 minutes on the phone with him regarding this issue. So we'll get rid of that one, and that one, and that one. Which brings me to my big ship progressive lollipop, as I like to call it. And this is all the people I've reached out to for help here for the last 5 years after Senator Sanders wrote the letter. But yet after Senator Sanders wrote his letter, he had a chance to tell the truth when in about 2016-17 when Shannon Allen, injured Amazon worker, homeless Amazon worker, was sharing her story because the World Socialists were using her story to sell rank and file committee or anti-union rank and file committees at Amazon. And he used her. She was mad at Senator Sanders because he only used her story to sell 15 an hour. And I was upset because he used her story and didn't even say a word about the minimum federal standards and didn't say a word about those minimum federal standards, him or Biden, as Sanders ran for 2 presidential cycles, and neither did Trump, for our Trump friends out there. Neither side wants to speak up on this issue, which brings me to some of these several other issues, people I've reached out to, like Gigi Ferguson and Washington, Maryland, past Senator Marilyn Chase. She's retired now, but 5 years ago she stroked me. Just kind of, she didn't want to help because when she found out we needed minimum federal oversight and I had the letter from Sanders, she ran away and closed all the doors on her and her daughter. Then Representative Pramila Jayapal said she agreed with the minimum federal standards but has closed her back on nose and turned her nose away at the minimum federal standards and never said a word to help me get this on the table so that we could get this issue addressed, along with any and all of our other pressing issues, like Medicare for all in whole Washington that we've lost on for 5 years. We told the injured workers, as Jason Call for Congress told me, I think he's been here, it was Jason Call for Congress told me that our Berkes and our Democrats, and he was also my local Democrat PCO, told me our priorities are whole Washington and Medicare for all, not your injured workers issue. The same thing the lady from the Latino Civic Alliance told me, that their priorities were not the same as yours, Darren. So my priorities were the minimum federal standards Senator Sanders told us about and the United States Congressional Research Service told us we need. But we also come to a Reverend Barber, who's going to be the chaplain on our progressive social ship here. Because I reached out to Reverend Barber and his Poor People's campaign, and they have refused to help. I even have a video where I make a phone call to Reverend Barber, and he has never responded back and refuses to. As I had pleaded to him, yet I told him MLK spoke up and was even, assassinated, speaking up for injured and recycling truck drivers that were killed on the job. He died speaking up for those people, yet Reverend Barber remains silent as I'm speaking up for the fact that we have one recycling worker in America killed on the job today, and nobody's talking about that. Especially Reverend Barber, who should be, as I'm begging for him to please speak for our issue and our minimum federal human rights so that a man gets a basic, $35,000 for an arm in one state, for an amputated arm, and then $750,000 in another state for an amputated arm. That's an inequality that we need to have addressed, and you would think Reverend Barber would want to address that, and he's not. And then anyways, as you go on to the ship here, it was Uphill Media that I tried to seek help from, Seattle Uphill Media and Portland Uphill Media, and I asked them, begged them for help, and none of them wanted to put the issue on the table for 5 years now as we push Med for all in whole Washington and have lost on all of them. Now we have Senator Bob Halsagawa, who is also pushing whole Washington, who I told about this issue, and yet, like I told you, he tells me he's got all other alternative solutions, kind of like the alternative solution Tyler Vager told me to seek from their Republican candidate, Scott Staffney, who is a former work comp attorney, who has alternative solutions from the minimum federal standards. We were told, Senator Sanders told us we need. And we were supposed to seek answers from the Republican Scott Staffney. Not to mention, we were told to vote for Tamara Borelli, who was pushing whole Washington, who turned out to be a full-fledged Trumpster. So I'm kind of perplexed as to why when I show Bob Halsagawa about Tamarini Borelli, they're not telling anybody about that issue. And also we got Seattle Socialist Alliance, who I have begged for help for now for maybe almost 10 years since I got hurt on the job. And she has turned her back on me for 10 years. That's not a labor voice. Labor voices speak up for some basic human rights. As you're speaking up for a minimum federal wage, and you're speaking up for whole Washington state fixes, but we're told she can't pick up, she's just a city councilwoman, she can't talk about minimum federal standards for injured workers. Why are you asking her to do that is what her people tell me. I'm asking her to do that because she could speak up for minimum federal oversight for all these other issues, even for, you know, the vote recently, it was coming down to, she's kind of like Joe Manchin. We get mad at him, Senator Joe Manchin, because he sides with states' rights over all the rest of our human rights. Well, the same thing is going on with whole Washington and Sawant and all my liberal left, as I asked for help for the Injured Workers of America with some basic federal minimum standards, like we have a basic minimum wage, and like we want some basic minimum care for everyone. That basic minimum federal care won't resolve what we get compensated for lost body parts if we're injured on the job. So therefore, we need the minimum federal standards just as much as we need the Medicare for all or the whole Washington, anything else we got going. So for the liberal left, how can I get mad at the Alec Wright, American Legislative Education Council, for those of you who don't know it, and they are the group of business folks from the right that are in bed with the Democrat left, to wage and rig our state laws against us and pretty much wine and dine our state lawmakers to tell us nothing's broken, everything's fine, is state lawmaker Senator Marco Elias likes to tell us, and he can fight for federal human rights as for LGBT community, which I'm all for that. But yet when I ask him up to speak up for the workers' federal human rights, he tells me everything's fine, nothing's broken, and we don't need any federal fixes. Washington's doing fine. Well, Senator Marco, Washington's doing fine and nothing's broken. Why did you have to ask, for PTSD coverage for firefighters and nurses? Why are you having to put up some new rules for back injuries? Why did you have to get PTSD coverage for firefighters? In other words, you had to make a whole lot of changes because things were broken and weren't right. And because of the report from NPR in 2015, you started backpedaling like they are in every state, but some states aren't going all the way. So even if you do great things here, and you are making some strides towards doing things better here in the state of Washington for injured workers, and that is awesome to see, but you shouldn't fear having some minimum federal standards for our brothers in Alabama. So as they're now used and screwed and glued and tattooed and then used as wedges for labor here in the Northwest, to say that if you don't start taking away more from your workers there in the state of Washington, we're going to move all our fine jobs to places like Alabama and Georgia and other different places. See, it comes back to bite us in the ass when nobody's being honest with us on an issue that has come down to workers' human rights, workers' federal human rights versus a state businessman rights to chase work comp rates and a race to the bottom for labor, because we're pitted against each other and it's a loss for labor. A loss that we can prove now with a 15% decrease from the insurance community has told us they're happy and really giddy about the fact that they've taken away 15% of the labor's ground bargain over the last 15 years nationally from our benefit. And they're all really happy about that, but yet those people that 15% are being pushed to the streets and cost shifted off to the feds, and we're not talking about that when state lawmakers like Bob Halsagawa can't get honest about that. And Jason Call for Congress tells me he's going to be different than Representative Rick Larson, who I have begged for help for almost 10 years now to address this issue and another issue that's really important that I have going with me and my family. Yet he refuses to, and as I've sought, and we won't get into the fact that I've sought mental health treatment from CMAR, who for a long time has told me to sing out about this abuse to me on YouTube so I can get my voice heard by people like Rick Larson, as CMAR's legislative liaison, Claudia De Alegre, breaks bread with whole Washington advocates Georgia Davenport and Call for Congress and different people, and Bob Halsagawa and Representative Ortiz Selvers. They try and spin a narrative on injured workers and immigrant Latinos on Latino Legislative Day in 2018. The people who you reach out for help to as an injured worker in America are the people who turn your backs on you, even though they were some of the ones who told you this is what the solution was. Even in 2010, we had BACA, a bill that was trying to put forth these minimum federal standards onto the table. Yet we lost, but we were trying to put it in when Republicans were in charge. It seems like we don't want to do anything for the people when we're in charge. We try to do it when the other side's in charge. Yet when we get in charge, all of a sudden we want to put Medicare before our immigration issue, before our injured workers issue, yet we lose on those issues, or we get a Happy Meal. I want to know why every time is that my Democrats get in charge here in America, the immigrants issues get put to the back burner, and so do the workers' rights issues get put to the back burner, but all of a sudden the Medicare for all gets put to the front burner, just like the Obamacare got put to the front burner, as he threw, you know, he was the, what was it called, the deporter-in-chief. So, anyways, I just wanted to share with folks what I had go down here as I reached out to my local Democrats and local progressive echelon and the community and all their members as they were running for office would close me out of their Facebook pages. Whole Washington, George's Davenport said, oh, he's making threats at our candidates. No, I was not. I even had one of their candidates, Democrat candidate here, which I'm sure another video you'll have to look at it, and I'll just leave it at that, where I had the State Representative Wicks legislative aide press harassment charges on me because I yelled and screamed at them and called them dirty names because I shared these videos with them that I was told by CMAR to make so that lawmakers like Representative Emily Wicks would listen to us and call for Congress, and Representative Rick Larson would hear us, yet CMAR's Claudia DeAlegre, legislative liaison for CMAR, you know, breaks bread, like I said, with Rick Larson and Ortiz Self, and they all negotiate and all work together, and yet they can't address the issues that are harming me and my family that CMAR themselves told me have harmed my mental health and need federal intervention to resolve. And besides that, they have a duty to report harm to humans. As they're pushing whole Washington and telling a man who's trying to get the truth told that Sanders told him about just sing out on the internet to get his voice heard. Yet, shouldn't that be what my mental health advocates in my community should be doing, is advocating my voice and other injured workers' voices and patients so that people like Representative Rick Larson and call for Congress won't sit around snicker at me and call me unhinged? Anyways, we'll put on a little music here because another thing CMAR has told me to do is I've got to write a song. Well, I've written several songs, and the thing is, I came to them 6 years ago with a song that I called Healing the Workers' Comp Blues. Yet here it is 6 years later, I'm still being told I have to come up with some kind of song to get people in my community and society that care about a war on injured workers and our basic minimum federal standards for workers in general. Because this hurts us all in the long run, and we need some minimum standards just as much as we have a minimum wage. Otherwise, you know, it's not really equal, or we can't call it equality in America when we're not even equal, all workers on the federal. So I'm going to leave it at that, and like I said, we'll try to go out with a little tune here, and we'll leave it at that. See if I can bring this up here. Here we go. They said to write him a song. I wrote him one that I sent to Sanders, and this is one I wrote him 6 years ago when I asked people for help. And I've been shunned, shamed, and closeted, and yelled, and screwed, and tattooed, you name it. Anything to get honest and put our solution for America's injured workers and another National Work Commission on my Democrats' table. Check. you somehow. Fall that with your power, if you can find it, my friend. Take it to the streets and the people, to bring about peace in the winds. I'll find my answers in you, to the questions I was seeking. I'm not the search no more. There's a time to my precious, my friend, but they all gonna sing. There you have it. That is the show for today, folks, and it's the big ship, Progressive Ollie. That's the big 5-0, the low down and the skinny, and what's happening to workers in America. Don't let nobody throw you or your human rights under a boat.